and coming over their house. And why should we want to go there? Why? I have no desire to mingle with them. Okay. And if you are reared in a Black family, as I was, in a Black community, as I was, and go to Black schools and then a Black college, by the time I got to the predominantly white law school, Georgetown University, I was so deeply rooted in knowledge of myself, confidence and love of myself. And so the Nation of Islam is not a proponent of us being desolate. It's not that we can't do trade and interact with other people, but only after our children develop to adults. Okay, do we want that interaction? You see Jewish children, you see Asian children. In the community I live in Chicago, which is an integrated community. Now, all of the schools are shut down and online, the public schools, because of COVID-19. But guess what? The private white schools are in session in person. I want you to ponder over that. I drove past 2 Jewish schools the other day. Well, one was goes from K through 12, and the other is a preschool. And those little children were outside, okay, having class outside. Nobody had a mask on. It was a windy day. We're on the lake. The virus can't transmit in that type of environment outdoors. But the point is, we don't control anything. We're told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and where to do it. Because we don't own land, we don't conduct business. And when you conduct your own businesses, then it's the business sector that really is responsible for the appearance of the community. It's the business sector's responsibility. All right. When you see a supermarket in an upscale white community, I think Sister Donna, you and I were talking about that the other day. This is the same supermarket chain, okay? And it's all over a given city. When you go up in the upscale white community and you walk in that store, it's like Shangri-La. Beautiful plants and flowers and wide aisles and lighting. Everything is beautiful. Somebody welcomes you. When you go in the colony, or the hood as we call it, there's a smell. Everything looks crazy. The entries and exits are limited to create the impression that the customers are thieves. And so we have to monitor you. We don't let you just come in and out several doors like we do in the white community. All of these things, the phrase, the devil is in the details. All of these little aspects of life, when there's an unseen outside force controlling you, and it orientates our children to a certain way of thinking about themselves, the way the parking lot looks. We are very clean people. You go in the so-called hood, there's trash everywhere. But look at the waste receptacles. They're full, which means they threw the trash in them as long as it would fit. But because the city where we pay taxes does not send the trucks around to clean up with the regularity that they do in the white community. If you go up on the so-called Gold Coast on Upper North Michigan Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, where wealthy Caucasians live, that little machine that the man rides on that looks like a vacuum cleaner underneath, They are going up and down those streets, not once a week, every day. You don't think white people throw trash on the ground? Where do you think the phrase white trash?
Okay, so she was getting a little too hot again. As soon as it gets heated up, the call drops. So what I want to do is we are getting in comments and questions from our listening audience so that they can participate in this meeting. I'm going to pose a question to you until we at this time, Brother Lewis. And one of our listeners wanted to know, what can we do to acquire land if we're starting from the absolute bottom?
I don't know what section of the country they're in, but acquiring the land is not nearly as complicated as what we make it. Let's say if they start on the bottom, I'm assuming that they don't have such a good credit score. But again, you can pool your resources together to buy land in Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia. There are owners who want to sell you land. And really, to be honest about it, it's easier to just go directly to the person and let the person owner finance the land to you. Owner finance the building to you. And y'all set the interest rate if it's any interest at all. And then you go and record it at the clerk of court's office and you pay your note. Getting the land is not really that big of a deal. You could owner finance it, you can group finance it, several different ways you can get it. But you know, there's one thing we need more than land. And it's in the Bible too, where in the book of Genesis, I think it might be the 5th chapter, it says, and there was no man to till the earth. We need land, but we need men. We need men who are land literate, and we have to reinvest in these little black boys, and they're all over the place, and getting them involved in the skilled trades so that you can monetize your land for you. And that's why I was getting at what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said about Tuskegee. And at Tuskegee, seeing the seminal fluid of the kingdom of God. See, we need to learn how to do everything we can possibly learn to manage and maintain our own communities. We need to get all of our sons involved in every skilled trade that we can possibly get them involved in. It's great to go to college, but when you know how to build a house, and it's a little video clip that maybe you'll get to show later on, when you know how my father, he cut tracts of timber, 100, 200, 300 acres of timber. They don't have to cut it the old way no more. They have machines that can cut it. They are groundhog, what they call groundhog sawmills. My father actually asked me to buy one when I first got out the military, and I just wasn't as obedient. But we can do this. Listen, sometimes when you don't have money, Black people in 2020, we got to get back to bartering with one another and really want a real relationship. If Dr. Ava's an attorney, I'm not an attorney. I don't know nothing about the law, but we could barter something together, and maybe I could go in and clear her land or pour the foundation for her new 5,000 or 6,000 square foot or 10,000 square foot house. We can make a deal. We can set the medium of exchange between one another. So we've done that in the past. Last point. When we built the popular Black Wall Street in Tulsa, there was no such thing as a FICO score. They couldn't go to a white bank and get a loan. They pooled the little resources that they had together. They were excellent skilled tradesmen, and white people are in a man dilemma too. They don't have people that want to work either. In fact, all of America, you can't find nobody that wants to do too much manual labor. There are not any what they call back in the day, bona fide tough guys that want to go endure the sun and the heat. So that means that if you're working for an old Caucasian whose children are on meth, he might just be willing to give up a few acres of land just for a little help around the farm. This is why the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad are so important, because they teach us to be so magnetic and so respectful. One Caucasian sold me a commercial property, and something happened. I got a little behind with the note, but he didn't take the property, and I went and actually wound up paying it off early. But I asked him, why didn't you come and try to take the land from me afterwards? And he told me because he wanted to go to heaven. And so he's gone now, but he didn't take the land from me. We paid it off early, and by God's grace, we're going to do something with it. So we need men to get busy and get involved in these skilled trades to build these Black business districts.
Thank you, Brother Lewis. And you really spoke into a sister's question that we also saw flash across the screen, and she was asking how we could acquire land. Like, well, she said the two sisters in Toomsboro, Georgia, but it was actually a group of 19 family members, and you spoke right into it, which was collective economics, which is exactly how we do it, which is how we do anything. And then we're so glad to have you back with us, Minister Ava. You are really on fire. Somebody said in the comments, they must be allergic to the truth. They can't handle it. It's too much fire. Too much fire. But we want you were making a very powerful point, and you were speaking into the conditions of our communities. And so, and how different they look. And so if you could continue on that vein and speak into, well, what is our responsibility in that, or do we just need to leave it as it is and separate, get out? What do we need to do?
Well, the problem is that when you live under the control of someone other than yourself, these are the results. That was the picture that I was painting. And everyone watching this program knows it's true. It's not only true coast to coast, it's true globally. I've traveled everywhere from here to Europe, to the continent of Africa, to the South Pacific. Everywhere you go, white people live in luxury and Black people live in poverty. So at what point do we say what's wrong with this picture? There has been a massive redistribution of wealth over the past 500 years that has to be reversed. But when I see some of the questions coming up on the screen, and they're excellent. But what we can't do is start in the middle of this problem with methodology. We have to start at the root of the problem, which is disunity. It has to be self first, then others. As long as we put the thinking of white people ahead of the thinking of ourselves, I don't care what we achieve in life, there will never be enough of us to come together. There has to be a willingness, as Brother Lewis just laid out. There's an unwillingness on our part because we think like white people. This unwillingness to sit down and be a part of the table. Many of us need to be the center of attention. Many of us have adopted the mindset of the Caucasian. This country is built on a doctrine of white supremacy. And some of us can't even accept truth unless it's endorsed by white people. That is our root problem. Now, what God has done, because he's executing his promise to Abraham, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, Allah will make you separate. We're being forced to do it. Donald Trump in office, Minister Farrakhan said in 2017 that God put him in that office. And his administration and a majority U.S. Senate are pushing us to unite because we have nowhere else to go. They are making life so untenable. COVID came and the whole world was put on pause. So everybody was watching when this white, I wanted to say something else, I had to pull back. This white police officer put his knee on George Floyd's neck and murdered him in front of the world on video. This was appalling, not only to us, but to anyone that had even an iota of humanity. Allah said, let me show you what Black people are suffering. And he didn't have to show that to white people. He was showing Black people what Black people are suffering. Because those of us who have carved out an oasis in this desert called America are fine with it. And you have people among us who make a living off of our suffering, who engage in this protracted civil rights movement. Our people in the South were not seeking integration. They weren't laying their life down to sit next to Heather. They weren't seeking integration. They were seeking desegregation, which is two entirely different things. They wanted to be liberated from the debilitating effects of Jim Crow. We were happy living among and with each other. This is a false mindset that was implanted in our brain by white people. This concept, this idea that is only about 60 years old, that we would like to be with white people. That's not our nature. It's not the nature of a black bird to live with a red bird. They don't hate each other. They all fly in the sky. But the God said in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, he said, be fruitful and multiply. How can you multiply when you're becoming something else? You can't do it. You cease to replicate. When you integrate with another unit that is other than you, that's when you reproduce. The word re means again. So when a black man reproduces himself, he can only do that with a black woman. We have been taught and trained in the last 60 years to lust for, to desire, to seek after the approval of the most unproductive people that ever came on this planet. They have produced nothing. We made the United States of America wealthy, and they owe us. And so Allah is creating conditions where the United States is dissolving back into the 50 separate sovereign jurisdictions that it began with. The only unity in the United States is their shared hatred and contempt for black people. And I can prove it in no limit of time, because you go to any place that's white, let's take Europe. Whenever we're not around, they immediately go to war with one another. Because killing is the nature in which they are created. And so in his wisdom, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in point number 5 of the Muslim program, I want every black man and woman in America to choose whether they want to go for self or whether they want, in fact, I'm going to read it so we can have accuracy here. We want every black man and woman to have the freedom to accept or reject being separated from the slave master's children and establish the land of their own. Now, when he says the freedom to accept or reject, he's talking to both us and the white people. He's saying, get up off us, leave us alone, because some of our people will stay with you. And we're not going to get in their way. We consider them collateral damage. We consider them a loss. And so when the time comes to negotiate the settlement, that's going to factor in all of the Black people that you made into yourself. You owe us for that, because you're robbing us of our creative sources. And so this is why it's so important to do what Brother Lewis convened this thing to discuss moving on now. You know, someone mentioned Toomsboro. This is God showing us that separation is in motion now. It's not a concept. It's not a theory. It's a reality. The sister who initiated this said it was the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Am I saying his name correctly? The young brother that was jogging in New Brunswick, Georgia. Now, that was a straight up lynching. These weren't even cops. These were some redneck, Peckerwood descendants and members of Klan, unintelligent, ignorant, brought up to blame Black people for their pitiful condition, angry over the fact, and envious, as we're taught, envious of this Black man having the freedom to run in the morning, to run. This is the kind of place you live in, Black people. They plotted his death for a long time. And on that day, they blocked him. They drove up on the sidewalk and they shot him to death in the street. The sister that initiated this land purchase in Toomsboro said she was so traumatized by this murder that she said, we need a safe haven. And that's when she joined with others. And in the twinkling of an eye, look how quickly they did it. Let's stop pretending that we can't do this. One of the statements I hate most is, what we gonna do if we live by ourselves? You sound 90 carat crazy. We are the makers and owners of this planet. We built America. We run it now. This is what COVID-19 revealed. We are the essential workers. And the minister told us, just withdraw for a few days. Stop spending $600 and $700 billion a year in the retail outlets of white America. Just withdraw and let's pool our resources. He said, make your own community a safe and decent place to live. And I just realized when those Black people bought that land, I realized what he meant by your own community. Not just Black, but where you own the land. That's the only way we're going to be safe. And then because we need a safe haven. When we say separation, we're not talking about getting in a canoe and trying to row back to the continent of Africa. We're talking about right here. This is where it starts, because we have work to do on ourselves before we try to go back home. Okay. But to own means that the land you stand on belongs to you. We need a safe haven from police killings. We need a safe haven from viruses running wild because of a country that is run by multinational corporations and interferes with its people's ability to employ natural, safe therapies. And in fact, to follow a diet which will prevent them from getting ill like that in the first place. 96% of people who have died from COVID-19 had an underlying condition. This is a dependent virus. So when it enters our system, it doesn't have the power to kill us by itself. It partners up with all that we have done to ourselves because we refuse to leave Satan. So we eat wrong, we drink poison water, we breathe polluted air, we live in colonies called ghettos. We hardly ever see grass or trees or water. There are young people living in Chicago, Illinois, who have never seen Lake Michigan. Why? Because we are trained to stay within the confines of where white people decide we're going to live. So we call something black too loosely. Oh, that's a black neighborhood. Why? Because a lot of black people live there. It's not black, it's white. Who owns the land? Who can come in and say, get out? And then we sit and we wait for them to tell us, oh, everybody's moving over there. Everybody's moving over there. It's as Brother Lewis said, some of us do the law, some of us do the accounting, some of us do the land development, some of us draw up the plans. We built their cities. We taught these people how to eat with a knife and fork. We provided the interior design for their antebellum mansions. We did that. And we made this country what it is. And now, thank God, it's coming down. And instead of us yearning, you hear them always say that, I'm going to be quiet. You hear them always say, we wanted to go back to normal. You and I don't want normal. Normal is what usually occurs. What we're seeking is the ideal. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward into a new reality. And the only way we can do that is to go up and down where we already live, where everything's boarded up, everything's got rust on it. These are perfect conditions for us to start all over and do for self. And now I'm sorry.
Oh no, that was so timely. In fact, it's a perfect segue. We're going to briefly show a video that gives a picture of what that looked like, but going into it, as you were talking about owning it and really getting the concept of owning it, to introduce the video that we're going to see about Haiti, you know, I've been researching various different Black communities and townships that were thriving prior to this. And we're going to talk about them briefly, but we'll watch this video just to kind of give us a view of one particular place. If you could turn up the volume. If our technical team could turn up the volume, we're unable to hear the video.
$88. The unemployment rate for Blacks is more than twice that of whites and about 40% higher than Hispanics. So what does it mean to be African American today as compared to being a Negro 70 years ago? we will attempt to answer the question, what is the legacy of Black America? What do we know about where we came from? What our culture is? We will look back at the best example of a thriving, self-reliant Black community in America, where Black people work together in a spirit of cooperation, where they achieved wealth and prosperity in the midst of blatant racism, violence, and ignorant opposition. That community is Hayti in Durham, North Carolina.
Durham, North Carolina is a place which the world instinctively associates with tobacco. It has, however, other claims to notice. Today, there is a singular group in Durham where a Black man may get up in the morning from a mattress made by Black men in a house which a Black man built out of lumber which Black men cut and planed. He may put on a suit which he bought at a colored haberdashery and socks knit at a colored mill. He may cook victuals from a colored grocery store on a stove which Black men fashioned. He may earn his living working for colored men, be sick in a colored hospital, and buried from a colored church. And the Negro Insurance Society will pay his widow enough to keep his children in a colored school. This is surely progress.
What hurt us was integration. Especially it came right through the middle of all of this was to move us out of Hayti.
You know, that may be how his business survived, because he moved so far away from the reconstruction or the demolition of Hayti until he was saved.
And there are reasons. Some of us assume that this is a new integrated society and there's no need for our children to carry that baggage with them. Which personally I think is insane. I think that all kids should be firmly aware of what Uncle Larry, Grandma and them had to do in order to get you right here where you at right now.
Of a physician, a Black physician, or you could walk a few more blocks down and you were standing in front of the home of a respected teacher in the neighborhood. Or you could walk a little further down and you were standing in front of...
When we look at African Americans today, and they have a network that's a tenth of what majority families have, we realize that we have to play a part in that.
You don't measure our society by how many rich people there are. You measure our society by how many successful young people there are. And this, our society is a failure, an abject, 100% failure.
That your mission is to save the next generation behind you. Because if you don't do something soon, there ain't gonna be nothing to talk about in our future, because our future is being destroyed.
You know, in that video, we saw a powerful visualization that really speaks to what you were addressing, Minister Ava, in terms of culture. We saw the brothers and sisters. We saw how impeccably dressed they were. There was a certain pride about them in their community. And so the topic of this town hall meeting is make Black business and cultural districts great again. And you've spoken to the killing culture of this Caucasian society. And we have also started emulating some of the worst of their culture. So I would like both you and Brother Lewis to speak into what does Black culture really look like? We know that we have seen the emulation of a culture that engages in any and everything that comes to mind. So when we're talking about making a Black cultural district and making it great again, what does that look like to you? What does that look like to our families, to our children, to Black people in general? And then how do we move in that direction?
Brother Lewis, you convened this and chose that theme. You start.
I think it's very important that we start with something that's said in the Muslim prayer. We've been greatly unjust to ourselves, and we need to confess our faults. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in What the Muslims Believe, he told us, we believe that the offer of integration is a hypocritical trick and is made by those who are trying to deceive the Black people into believing that their 400-year-old enemies are all of a sudden their friends. Furthermore, we believe that such deception is intended to prevent Black people from realizing that the time in history has arrived for the separation from the whites of this nation. If the white people are truthful about their professed friendship toward the so-called Negroes, they can prove it by dividing up America with their slaves. We do not believe that America will ever be able to furnish enough jobs for our own millions of unemployed, in addition to jobs for, at that time, 20 million Black people as well. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said we need 8 to 10 states to begin our healing. If you looked at the video, again, you can see that we built our own hospitals, we buried our own dead, we built our own appliances, we were building our own houses. And when you're a producer, it's much easier to keep a marriage bond together because the man is doing what God created us to do. They used urban renewal to destroy Black business districts so that we could not provide for our women and children. And then they turned right back around and didn't have anything for the Black man to do because they really are not employing us, which many of us were employing ourselves. And they offered our woman a welfare check. That welfare check and us being outside of the houses or the homes took all of the discipline out of the home and took the Black woman out of her nature, out of her character, and forced her into being someone she is absolutely not. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1972, when on a panel, Is It Too Late? He chided the panelists about being beggars. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not a beggar and did not want the Black man to be a beggar. He wanted us to be productive and producers and to do something with ourselves. And you know what? We were well on our way. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not want us to go and get on welfare. He said welfare meant farewell. What kind of men can we be if we don't provide a way for our children that are coming behind us? And the beauty of owning business and making Black business districts and cultural districts great again is busyness, like America. Are working and we're working on projects together. But more than that,
think Brother Lewis.
Yeah, I think we lost Brother Lewis this evening. Again, they're powerful, but we can continue on, Minister Ava, on that
Yes,
line of culture.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back.
All
Looks
right.
like he's back.
Okay.
Well, it seems like when we're talking, it knocks it off a little bit. But this Black Business Cultural
Gotta
District,
Black
Cultural District, we can really rebuild them now. And we should, and let me say this, we have to be careful with organizations and the enemy paying organizations to get us to focus on, I'm gonna just say it straight up, LGBTQ issues rather than dealing with traditional Black family values. The traditional, we built historically Black business districts and cultural districts with traditional Black family values, which we've always learned and we hold on to in the Nation of Islam with respect. We say, yes, sir, no, ma'am. We don't argue and cuss each other out with profanity. There are some people who are talking a lot of good talk, but I feel so bad because it's difficult for me to allow my children to listen to it because every other word is profanity. We were calling each other brother and sister, not calling each other the N-word, not disrespecting our women. So our culture, we have to really take charge of our culture. And believe it or not, when you own a business, you can set the tone because you can say, well, brother, if you're going to be employed here, you have to pull your pants up. You have to be decent when you come to work. If you wear a McDonald's uniform, he'll pull his pants up if we own a business. So I'll stop there.
Well, I would add to that, and I think this is an incredible discussion, and I encourage all our wonderful viewers tonight that this is how we should talk in our household, with our friends. The Minister Farrakhan has begged us to rise above the cheap language and subject matter that we tend to engage in. And as you pointed out, Brother Lewis, using profanity. God doesn't recognize profanity. People drop a word now and then, but when it becomes woven into the conversation, you're actually depriving yourself of your ability to draw the power of Allah into your life to execute your will and to bring into fruition what you desire. But on the issue of culture, we're taught in the Nation of Islam that we were robbed of the 3 sciences necessary to build and sustain a nation. And you made me remember it, Brother Lewis, because you talked about marriage. The number one science, pardon me, number one science that we were robbed of is the science of mating. The second science is the science of warfare. And the third is the science of business. These 3 sciences, and of course, science is knowledge systemized. So the knowledge of mating, systemized. The knowledge of warfare, systemized. That means organizing that knowledge into an effective methodology of a way we can operate and function. We have a complete warped concept of marriage. We think it's about sex and getting somebody to share problems with. We don't even look at it as necessary to reproductivity, because now the majority of people have children and give no thought to getting married. You see people with 8 or 9 children calling each other my fiance. Well, why aren't you married? Well, we couldn't afford it. But you have 9 children. We were taught by our slave master, who is an adulterer, who is a predator, who's a child molester, who's a violator of natural law. He broke up the Black family. Had we not had unity, even in our worst condition in slavery, when we came out of slavery, the first thing we did was marry. At the beginning of the 20th century, the marriage rate in the Black community was in the 90 percentile. I grew up in a community, a Black community, and in my entire childhood, I knew of one divorce, and it was whispered about. You know, the Butlers are getting a divorce. You barely knew of that. Now it's the divorce to people not getting married at all, because we lost knowledge of the science of mating. Not only should we marry with an idea of producing offspring who are born with skill sets to build the next level of progress that we're envisioning. Every nation has different needs at different stages. And so women produce children who will grow up to manifest and bring to fruition what we need to make happen. But we don't marry or come together with a partner with the idea of how does this facilitate our nation. And that's what keeps you together. When the early stage of the hot romance and all of that begins to calm down, what makes you really love each other is experiencing one another's gifts and willingness to contribute to a nation. Your shared love of God. This is what keeps you together. And then producing offspring that reflect the culture. And what is the culture? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, culture is the outgrowth of the thinking of a people in a particular period in history. And so when I was growing up, the culture was Motown. I grew up surrounded by, they were playing the LPs on the stereo. And we're listening to Etta James, At Last, My Love Has Come Around. Okay, that's what I grew up on, doo-wop and Johnny Mathis and Sam Cooke. And then that's followed by the Temptations. Okay, when I'm in middle school, I'm listening, and I got a father who, as Brother Lewis said, goes out and works for a living. A school teacher, a scientist in physics and biology. And when he didn't earn enough teaching to keep us in our little house, he got jobs, second jobs and third jobs. He tutored. He worked all summer, even though they were on vacation. He used that time to work so that we could be comfortable and enjoy life. But I grew up expecting a man telling me he ain't too proud to beg. Because that's the kind of music I was listening to. When my husband and I were recording, it was the Whispers. It was Keith Sweat. It was Anita Baker. It was Sade. Okay? That's the outgrowth of the thinking of a people. Where men love women and women love men. Okay? And you're expected to approach the lyrics of the songs talked about going to her father to ask permission. Can I talk to your daughter? Okay. And so after the Million Man March, Satan got in it, and all of a sudden there's hatred of the female. And all of a sudden the female is calling herself low down names. She's getting undressed. Even in the 90s, we were still wearing clothes. And I'm not talking about in the Nation of Islam. When I look back at some of the movies and programs from that time, and the Bill Cosby Show, and one of my movies, which my husband doesn't care for, what was that movie with Eddie Murphy? Boomerang.
Boomerang.
Wearing the padded jackets and all this, and everybody was, as you have pointed out, Brother Lewis, they were well groomed. And that film from Durham, this is who Black people are. When we had the Negro Baseball League, the brothers came to the games in suits and ties and the fedora hats. The women had on high heels and furs wrapped around their neck. When you watch Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks marching in the civil rights movement, they had on heels. They had small little waistlines, their own hair, and it was groomed. This is who we are. Accept our own and be ourselves. That's what we have to return to. And we can't do it until, as we saw in those films, we see and love the value of ourselves. The white man envies us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said he envies our physical beauty. We've been made to think we're unattractive. And white people, the minute they get an extra dollar, they use it to try to look Black. The white man spent a century turning his woman into something that could be called attractive. From 1900, remember they used to wear the long dresses they would have a fake rear end. And they spend millions and billions getting tans and getting fake lips and trying to get darker. And now they're trying to cornrow their hair. And what are we doing? We're trying to be blue-eyed blondes. It is a sick world that has to go down because there's mental illness on both sides. And so the business that we're talking about today is an economic system where we exchange goods and services with one another, either for a medium of exchange or for each other's services. And in order to do that, there has to be a return of trust. But I can't love you unless I love Ava. Because if I hate myself, if I hate my beautiful brown complexion that white people wish they had, if I hate that, then when I see you, I hate you too. We hate the way we speak. We hate the way we look. And everybody on earth is trying to emulate us. We're the fathers and mothers of culture. So when we rap, they rap. And this is why there was an all-out effort to break up the Black family. Because little white boys had posters of Michael Jordan in their bedrooms. They don't want posters of Barack Obama in white boys' bedrooms or Bill Cosby. And now the worst case scenario, pictures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who, if people were free, if children were free to listen to him, they would have his poster in their bedrooms and say, I want to be Farrakhan. So it is up to us to return to ourselves and understand, lastly, that every single one of us, not some of us, all of us, Allah God, whether you call him Allah, God, Jehovah, Christ, whatever you call him, he gave you, Sister Donna, Brother Lewis, me, all of us have a unique set of attributes that are his, that the minister said, when we come into the knowledge of each of our purpose and fulfill that purpose, when we do what we were born to do, when people see us do it or experience us do it or experience the results or the product of what we do, it's the same as if Allah did it. It's experiencing God when we are 100% that which we were born to be, not some copy of somebody else. And the only way to do that is to establish a relationship with the Lord of the world. You talk to him and ask him, what am I here to do? And then we take all of those this unlimited array of brilliance and talent, and we combine that, and that becomes heaven on earth. And we saw it on that film clip. This ain't our first time at the rodeo. This is not rocket science. This is being who we are, the original people.
Thank you both for your commentary on that. And one of the main things that I extracted out of that is at the root of it, culture begins at home, in the family, and the necessity of a strong Black family to establish proper moral culture is key to building the base. All institutions come up out of family first,
exactly.
At least the strong institutions and the empires. The Caucasians, they practice that with their science of mating.
That's right.
Strong families.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right.
They built
may I say one more thing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because, you have to start where you are. And I know some people are out there thinking, well, I didn't grow up with a father. My grandmother raised me. My auntie raised me. I'm single. I've got children. I'm raising them by myself. You're saying they need a father figure. That is why we need a community. That's the whole point. So that we can provide that father figure for the child. And just like it took a couple of generations, several generations for us to fall down to this level, in a few generations, we'll be back up to where we were. But start where we are. We bring all the babies, all the women, all the men, everybody together and start turning inward. And then before we know it, not only won't be back to where we were, we will be making progress such as we have never experienced, because now we have been to hell and back. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure nothing like this ever happens again.
That's right.
That's a perfect segue into what we want to go into next. And I want to remind the listening audience, again, this is interactive. We thank you for your questions. And we have time for a couple of more questions and some special announcements at the end. And we don't want the conversation to end here. This is not a program that you just come and watch and say, hey, that was a great show with Brother Louis Ali and Minister Ava Muhammad. Wow, I can't wait to the next one. No. This is a dialogue that you put your input in, but then we walk away and we start making movements. We share it. We talk about it. We, as you all discussed, drop our buckets where we are, as Booker T. Washington said, and start building where we are. But the last words that you said were a great segue into this, and I want to set a backdrop because you talked about families coming together and children coming together. And I was researching Indiana Avenue, which is in Indianapolis, and that is where Madam C.J. Walker established her company. But see, I learned she was located in one place, But when they established the Black Indiana Avenue, she moved her manufacturing over to there. And this place was a mile business district, and then it had 400 or 500 acres of Black families started to populate around it. And what I want to address is this part, because the first Black-owned business there opened in 1865. And only 5 years later, 974 Blacks, which was about a third of the whole population of the city, were living there. And then the city began to hire Black police officers and firefighters specifically to protect that area. So it's a two-part question, which also leads into one of our audience's questions. One, what are some of the things that we can say and do to convince one another to start moving together? Because that was something where there wasn't anything. And then a third of the population moved in because we do have to come up out of our comfort zone. And the second part, which came from the audience, was how do we police our own Black communities? Now, the city did that, but how do we do it for ourselves? And we have a few minutes to take that question and one more, and then we're going to go into special announcements.
Well, one thing is that you go ahead, Brother Lewis, because I just talked.
Go ahead, Dr.
Well, I was only going to say quickly that we have, as we call the hood, and Minister said the proper name is colonies because we're colonized. We don't have to go anywhere. That was one of the most attractive things I heard when I came in the nation. I remember my minister, Abdul Karim Muhammad in New York, said in a Sunday lecture, he said, you don't have to go anywhere. You just have to be yourself. And what has occurred with integration is a disconnect between the so-called educated middle class and the masses of our people. The rejoining of that. We don't invest in the Black community. We don't serve the Black community. It's in the condition it's in because no matter how much money we have, white people will never serve us.
That's
okay.
Right.
And so it's incumbent upon the Black, there is a business class, there is a professional class, but every time we get a few dollars, we spend it with white people. We go get a Mercedes Benz, we go buy a house, we move way across town. Okay, so let's at least come together. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says 6 to 8 of you go in the hood, go and walk and look at the broke down buildings and see what you can set up. Starbucks isn't scared to come.
That's right.
McDonald's isn't scared to come. See, I can't stand Negroes that say I'm scared. They might do something to me.
Wow.
But all of the big major retailers who are making a fortune off of us, they're not scared. Dunkin' Donuts is not scared. Burger King is not scared. Pizza Hut is not scared. The liquor stores are not scared. So why are we afraid to go into our own community and provide a service for our people? The little barbershops are there, the little hair salons, the braiders who the states are trying to run out of business, trying to make you get a license to do what you naturally do. Okay, we need to organize 6 to 8 at a time in whatever field we're in. Okay, and go and offer that. Open up more restaurants. Open up some shoe repair. You know, we buy a pair of shoes. You said it earlier, Brother Lewis. We don't know how to fix anything. We have to join AAA, and we can't jump. We can't even give ourselves a jump. Okay, we don't know how to do anything. We don't know how to sew a dress. We're buying clothes out of places like Target and Walmart. Okay, my mother made our clothes when we were children. And real cotton and silk because she bought the fabric.
That's right.
And then you can make whatever you desire. But now we're relegated to these little cheap, phony fabrics that irritate your skin and poison you. Let's service the community. And understand, Black people don't say they won't spend the money because they're spending it. Lost. Their AMC theaters opening up. They're not scared.
That's right.
So stop it. That was my only message, my last point.
You know, to Dr. Ava's point, you know, the first law in the universe is motion. And we didn't become attracted to Minister Farrakhan or these teachings because Minister Farrakhan was sitting down on them. He was moving. And in that motion and the way he was fighting, it attracted our minds. And in that motion,
yes,
and the attractive force of what he was doing, not just saying, doing, he reproduced men that wanted to do what he's doing. He said, make our communities safe and decent places to live. Those are instructions. And so I'm inspired, and I know the people in the Hot Black Coffee Party think tank are very inspired because we're willing to do what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is doing, and that is what men always have to do, and that is sacrifice in order to bring into reality that which we claim to believe in.
Exactly.
We can't just talk about it. It's so interesting that when you look at sperm under a microscope, they say that the male is faster, but the female is stronger. I thought that was real interesting because ultimately I would like to see our sisters doing a lot more talking than our brothers. And our brothers should be fast to give them and to build something for them to talk about. You know, when you read the story of David and Saul, it said that the women were singing the praises of David and Saul. It didn't say nothing about the men singing the praises. The men were fighting a war and building something in reality for our women to talk about. And I always say this, you know, every man, if we are men, we should want a legacy. And, you know, men might have the first say, but usually women are the omega. They got the final say. And right now, we're not giving our women enough to talk about. And our fathers did. You know, every time I think about Dr. Ava Muhammad, she told a story. I don't know if we have time to tell it or not, but she talks about her father. And in my mind, I could just see it because I grew up with a no-nonsense, very not play around Black father. And she talks about how her father, I think a Caucasian did something to offend the women in her family. And her father just told him, look, you go in the house. You just get back. And he went down there and knocked that devil out. Well, every time I think about it, you know, it just makes me feel so good because as men, this is what you call militant morality. There are things that we should be angry about. You don't tell no Black man not to be angry. There are things that we should fight for, but it shouldn't be over drugs and degeneracy. It should be over our busyness, which I say again is a marriage. A marriage is a busyness where we're working on a project and a product together so that we can display our unity before the world. So I just thank y'all so much for thinking about this serious topic. Make historically Black business and cultural districts great again. And I hope you'll tell us more about Father, Dr. Ava.
I see a message from Brother William and about Michigan, Muhammad Mosque #1. And I just want everyone to be aware that is the new Mecca. That is the new Mecca.
That's right.
We're about to experience and bring in a dramatic change planet. And so the Mecca that's in Saudi Arabia, like everything else, shut down. When the world shut down, it was a sign of the end.
That's
And
right.
when it truly opens back up, because the minister just said Thursday, this is coming to an end, what's going on now. And there's something else coming behind this. And we have to be prepared. And so let's start thinking about our new reality. Let's start thinking about the greatness of cities like, look what they did to Detroit when it was a bustling Shangri-La with Motown. See, they lured Berry Gordy out of Motown, out of the Motor City to Los Angeles. The major car manufacturers went overseas. Back in the Georgia with an 8th grade education. I learned that watching the Temptations biography. Come up there, bring your children, and make enough money on that assembly line in Detroit to buy a home and educate the children. There were in metal and carpentry and I remember the wood shop, but brothers came out of high school.
That's right.
Capable of getting of earning a living because of their skill in a particular trade.
That's right.
Women knew how to cook and sew. And not only that, we had a class called home living, which is very similar to the Muslim girl training class in the nation. Because being a homemaker is how to manage a home. It's like managing a corporation.
That's right.
The father's the CEO and the mother's the CFO, Chief Financial Officer.
That's right. That's right.
And all of the children, they're shareholders, and they are the what the company's producing. But then they become producers themselves. And from a very young age, when our children are toddlers, I let my grandchildren help me. Mimi, can I help you do this? They're going to mess everything up. They're going to tear it up. But you destroy their spirit. It's human nature to want to give, want to contribute. So even if they help you carry the laundry from point A to point B, and they drop it the whole way, so what? Pick it up, but involve them. Because we wait until they're 15 years old out here carjacking. What are we going to do about the youth? We got to get the youth back. As my husband always says, get them back from where? Why did you let them go?
That's right.
You're responsible.
That's right.
Lions and zebras and turtles, they don't let their offspring get away from them until they're ready to go for self. And the first thing every creature teaches its offspring is who its natural enemy is.
Teach, Dr. Ava.
Before you learn to feed yourself, you are taught as a zebra, never go near a lion.
That's right, or wolf.
Whatever you do. Okay? This is what we have to start teaching our children. They are your natural enemy.
Amen.
You can take it or let it alone. All praises due to Allah.
Praise be to Allah.
Thank you, Brother Lewis. Sister
That
Donna,
was powerful.
all the viewers and great
That was-
notes there.
That was so powerful. So that time went by so incredibly
It
fast.
did.
We have 6 minutes left, and we have a couple of announcements that we want to make. Of course, as you see scrolling underneath, and I have to say, home ec was one of my favorite class, but I was a wood shop girl, and I love power tools to this day, and I got power tools, and I love them.
I'm telling you.
My husband bought me a circular saw one Mother's Day, and I was in heaven.
Wow, you're awesome.
I love it. But as you can see scrolling at the bottom of the screen, we invite you to sign the petition, especially as we're coming up on this very pivotal election season and people are talking about voting. Well, we have a vote that we want you to vote on too.
That's right.
And go to projectseparation.com and sign the petition so that we can bring forth a referendum to bring about the vote for separation. It's going to happen, as we know, but we're giving you the opportunity to choose.
Yes.
So please visit www.projectseparation.com and sign the petition today. We also want to invite you to www.ministerava.com. Not only is this program streaming live there, but you can find all the books by Minister Ava, including her 2 newest publications that you must have in your library. They are ebooks, so you can easily access them. The first one is The Season of Separation, How to Escape Time. Now, I know the title alone draws you in.
It does.
Who would not want to know how to escape time, and what does that even mean? And here's a little hint. It actually came from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his 2010 Savior's Day address. And he teaches on how to escape time. So you need to dig into this book. And the second newest publication is Directing Your Will, Thoughts, and Words to Get Your Life in Order. And if we never needed a time to get our life in order, now is the time. We also want to announce the convener of this platform, Brother Louis Ali, Brother Louis of the South. He has a wonderful program, the Great Separator. Yes, as Minister Dave always calls him, the Great Separator, because if you listen to him on any of his many platforms, if you've heard him on Time to Leave, if you've seen him anywhere, that's going to come out of his mouth. 2 things you're going to hear: separation and integration is a sin. Those will always be the dominant themes. But he, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, a land developer. He also provides fresh produce to the community. Right. He and his sons, not just him, he's not just talking the talk. He's walking the walk, and he's brought his children along with him, along with other young Black men. And they have a program, a farmer's market. And you can visit it at dirt, D-I-R-T, that which you need to grow your food at www.growdirtbr.com or www.growdirt.net. You can also check out his YouTube channel, Hot Black Coffee Party. And if you like what you heard today and you want to further this conversation, make sure you put no sugar in the chat. That's what Brother Louis Ali says. Hot black coffee, no sugar, and I'm adding the no cream.
No cream.
So again, we don't want you to walk away and just sit here, but share it and encourage one another. And when we have another program, come back and share some of your suggestions. Please read through the chats too, because you'll find interesting dialogue among the participants and their comments and what's going on in their cities too. And we encourage you to continue to add to that chat, even though this program is over, so that we can all come together and separate. So we have exactly 2 minutes left. If each of our presenters would like to make a 1 minute, I don't know if these powerhouses can, but if we each like to make a 1 minute closing statement, and we thank everybody for your participation this evening. 1 minute.
I want to thank Dr. Ava Muhammad, our student national spokesperson, for gracing us with her presence on this panel. And thank you so much, Sister Donna, Sister Rona, Brother Troy, Brother John, Sister Stephanie, for all that you've done to make this panel successful. But most of all, I want to thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for lifting up the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad high enough for us down south to see. And I want Dr. Ava to give him the greetings from the south and tell him we intend to make the Honorable Elijah Muhammad word bomb.
Alaikum salam. Thank you, Brother Louis. Thank you, Sister Donna, and all of the team that helped make this. I'll quickly answer the question that came from Europe. Should we who live in Europe separate or leave from Europe, separate and leave Europe, or build separated communities in Europe? Start right where you are. Start right where you are. You take a city like London, or you take where there are a huge number of Black people, you form these communities based on the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's economic blueprint and some of the things you saw tonight. And you start where you are. And then in a very short time, in a couple of generations, we'll be ready to return to where we love to live. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we circle the equator.
Beautiful
Thank you
closing
all
words.
so much.
Beautiful closing words. And we thank you for joining us this evening. We hope and pray that it was an evening well spent. And on behalf of the host, Hot Black Coffee Party, make it a productive evening. And it's over, but it ain't over.
That's right.
That's right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. We have an event. One last important announcement. How can I forget this before we go? Tuesday, September 22nd, and you will find the flyer on ministerava.com. There is a town hall meeting on separation being hosted by the Delaware Valley region. You do not want to miss this. You don't want to miss this, and you want to lend your ears and invite as many people as you can to come participate in this virtual town hall meeting on separation. That's next Tuesday evening at, I believe, 7 p.m. Eastern time. That was in the Eastern time region. But you can go to ministerava.com and you can go on Facebook and you'll see the flyer with the link so that you can join in via Zoom and be a part of that discussion as well. That's it.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.